Hey, welcome back, guys, to another episode. And today, what I'm going to be discussing is tips for new video game collectors. So, for some of you, which video game collecting is kind of old hat, you could probably skip this video. But for the newer collectors, I think this is something that's going to be helpful to newer collectors. One of my subscribers asked me to do a video like this, and I thought it was a good idea actually, since I've been collecting for a long time, and I've kind of accumulated a lot of knowledge over the years about the hobbies. So I thought this would be a good video to do, and I just have a bunch of tips written down about basically some things that I've learned along the way. Some are maybe a little obvious, some not so obvious, but to new collectors, hopefully they find this helpful. So the first thing which I want to say, and this is kind of basic, but I think it needs to be known, is the difference between NTSC and PAL. Um, in current generations, it's not really an issue, as the newer systems are all basically play, foreign games, Japanese games, European games. The PS5 does, the PS4 did as well. But older systems, especially the cart systems, were all region specific, and you really need to know the difference between them, because they won't work on systems that don't correspond. Like, a European release will not work on a US Nintendo or Super Nintendo, vice versa. And those carts in the different regions actually look different, so they're very easily distinguishable. But one of the things, like if you're on eBay, for instance, one of the safest ways to make sure that you're buying an American version, if you is just buy from American sellers, because they're usually American sellers sell the U.S. Versions. But get to know the difference between NTSC and PAL, and what the difference between what the carts look like. In actuality, the only cart system that I can think of that works worldwide was the Sega Master System. So you can actually buy Sega Master System games from all over the world and play them on the US system. Next is get to know these things really well. These should be your best friend. And what these are screwdrivers that open up carts. Now, these are called Gambit screwdrivers. And these very two screwdrivers, these identical ones, you can buy on eBay right now for $6.95 with free shipping. So they're cheap. And this will probably be one of the best investments you ever make. The reason being, well, there's multiple reasons for it. I'm just going to take out one Nintendo game, Adventure Island. Nintendo games, as some of you may or may not know, either have 3 screws or 5 screws. 1, 2, 3. And if it was 5 screws, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One of these screwdrivers will fit in here. And I'll take this apart right now just so people can see the inside. Just unscrew it, take the screws out. Just one. They're very small, so just be careful not to lose them. The Super Nintendo and N64 one, which is this one, works for both of them. This one's in there really good. Gotta get a little deeper. There we go. So this takes like, just how long does it take you to screw out 3 screws from something? These are in there pretty good, so it's just taking me an extra 30 seconds here. Okay. All right, so I got the screws out, comes apart. Now here's the key. Here's the chipboard. This comes out pretty easily, or it should. Yes, there we go. Comes out pretty easily. It just fits right in. Now, a couple things why this is important. A, to clean. These little metal pins, the reason why a lot of Nintendo games back in the day didn't work, and remember people would like blowing them and everything, is these pins would get dirty. And actually blowing in it actually hurt them because you're creating condensation, and it would create rust, and that would actually make the situation worse. So what you should do is, when you want to clean your game, take it out like so. Take a Q-tip, dip it in rubbing alcohol, and then just wipe down all of these pins with some rubbing alcohol on a Q-tip. I think only one time was I not able to get a game to work after doing this. So I've bought so many games where people are like, "Oh, I'll just give this away because the games don't work," and all they needed was a cleaning. And I got some good titles because people thought they had broken games when in fact they just needed to be cleaned. So that is a very important tip. The next one is, if you can, I don't know if you can see, but there's all these like numbers and stuff on these. If you're buying an expensive game online, be sure to always ask to see the board, because that's how you're going to be able to tell counterfeits. If they don't want to send you pictures of the boards, move on. Don't even bother with the seller because it's something fishy. So always ask to see the board, especially if it's an expensive game, because you'll be able to tell by the board right away whether it's legit or not. And first of all, any counterfeit, the board's not going to even, most of the time, not even look like that, so you'll know right away. But if it does, you can find online, you can Google, what game is this? Adventure Island board. And it'll tell you what the board is supposed to look like, and just compare it to the picture that they send you. That's it. Very simple. And when you're selling games, always include a picture of the board, especially on the more higher end games. If you're selling a $10 game, nobody's going to be counterfeiting a $10 game. But if you're selling a relatively expensive game, and just use your judgment, but always include a picture of the board, clear picture of the board, so they can tell the serial numbers and everything else. And also, when you're selling a game, be sure to clean the game so people don't start messaging you, "Oh, the game doesn't work," and then you have to explain to them you have to clean it and whatnot. So you clean the games before you sell them. So that's why these come in super handy. Again, on eBay, they're called GameBit screwdrivers. This exact pack of 2 is $7 with free shipping. Best investment for any game collector there is. All right. So as far as pricing of games is concerned, generally speaking, what I do, a lot of people go by a website called Video Game Price Charting, which is a decent guide for games. It's not bad, but I don't like it. I think it averages out things too much over a long stretch of time. And the way games fluctuate in price nowadays, I think really the best way to do it is by going on most recent sold listings on eBay. Don't go by what people are asking for, buy it nows. That means nothing. You can ask for $1 million if you want. That doesn't mean you're going to get it. So always go by sold listings, and just be aware of prices. Sometimes I'll be sitting, watching TV, and I'll just start on my phone, just start looking up prices of games, just to familiarize yourself with them, just so you know when to recognize a good deal. And that's important. That's how you're going to find good deals, if you know prices offhand, if you can spot that deal immediately. So just sit there, you're thinking of a game, just look it up. It takes 2 seconds on your phone to look up a game on eBay, what it sold for, most recently. So I think that's very important, is familiarizing yourself with prices, because these games are starting to go up and you need to get a deal or you're going to be paying just crazy money for a lot of this stuff. Next, and this is really applies to any hobby, but I can't stress this enough. And I've fallen victim to this a little bit myself over the years, and I'm sure a lot of collectors do. But collect what you love. I cannot again stress that enough. Video games, there's a lot of systems, a lot of genres, and there's thousands of games in each of those. Just the PlayStation 2, it has, I don't know, like 3,000 games or something crazy. Collect what you love. For instance, and I mentioned this in one of my older videos, a lot of people like RPGs, and which are role-playing games. They're an expensive genre of games. And when I used to collect a little more hardcore, I'll buy them just for the sake of having them. But then as time went on, I'm like, why do I have these? I mean, they're literally just sitting there, not doing anything. Like, I don't play them. What do I have it just to look at the cover? It became just absolutely pointless. So eventually, I got a rule. It was like, just buy a stuff that you love, something that you would. I mean, I have right now probably about 2,000 games, 1,500 to 2,000 games. Never in a million years am I going to be able to play through all of them. But my rule is, if there's no chance I'm ever going to have any desire to play it, don't buy it, no matter what it is. Like, I've had in my collection Panzer Dragoon Saga, which is a $1,000 game on the Sega Saturn, and I sold it because I was like, I have no interest in it. I'm not going to play it. What good is it doing me sitting on my shelf? I might as well sell it, take that money, and use it to buy something which I actually want more. I'm into shmups, shoot 'em ups. I can that $1,000 would go a long way in buying a couple or several really decent shoot 'em ups. So that's the idea. Basically, just buy what you love. Another one is get involved in the community. Get involved in social media, on YouTube if you can, on Facebook, Instagram, things like that. Follow other collectors. The more people you know, the more connections you make, it's just better. First of all, it's going to expand your knowledge base. And it's going to give you connections for, like, hey, somebody's going to be looking for whatever. If somebody's looking for Panzer Dragoon Saga when I was selling it, I could be like, hey, I have it. And you work out a deal with another collector and avoid eBay and things like that, and all their fees. And that way you can actually charge the person a little less because you're not going to be dealing with eBay fees. So make connections. It's a great community. There's a lot of great people in it. So don't be shy and you jump in. Again, Facebook and Instagram are great places to do it. There's tons of gaming groups on Facebook. Follow hashtags on Instagram, and that'll open up Pandora's box as far as finding other collectors. And same on YouTube. Do a channel. I mean, you don't have to have a lot of followers, but again, it creates a community, and I think that's really important. Next is when buying on eBay, and I alluded to this earlier. Be very careful of counterfeits. It's become a kind of a rampant issue on really in the community, because it's getting easier and easier to counterfeit games. So be able to spot a fake, like with the card games. Always be able to figure out if it's a legitimate board. And a lot of times people create fake labels if it's like a torn label. A lot of the times these labels tear. Always try to compare labels. If it looks off a little bit, ask the seller, is that the original label? Things like that. If they tell you yes, well, then just use your best judgment and, look at it as closely as possible in the pictures. If the seller doesn't have a lot of pictures, don't be afraid to ask for more pictures. They're trying to sell to you. So don't be afraid to ask questions. I've bought and sold on eBay a lot, and I don't get offended when people ask me questions. And don't be, don't be scared to ask people questions because they're asking for your money. So don't worry about that. But again, with carts, watch out for fake labels. But the biggest thing is for the boards. Always look at the boards. As I said earlier, people are not going to be counterfeiting, $10 games. They might be counterfeiting $500 games, $1,000 games, and if the deal looks too good to be true, very likely it is. And also, one of the ways to really tell is look at a seller's feedback. If it looks like somebody that's got a reputable, look at their feedback. See what other buyers said about them. If they have a substantial amount of feedback, then fine, you can feel comfortable. But if somebody that has a few feedback and it's only as a buyer, be wary and do a little more investigating. So that's what I do. I never buy from a seller that doesn't have a substantial amount of feedback. I just don't. I, I don't want the headache. I do my research. I look at their feedback, see if anybody has ever made any complaints that they sold a counterfeit or anything like that. And then, I really examine the pictures. I ask if they didn't have enough pictures, I ask for more pictures. I always look at the board. Now, with CD games, it becomes a little trickier. They're getting easier and easier to fake the art, the on the cases. With these laser printers and everything, it's becoming easier and easier to um, print out fake artwork that looks exactly like the original. Again, cheaper games, nobody's going to go through the trouble of doing it for a cheap game. Just be wary of the more expensive games. Um, and again, with those, I would just look at feedback because it's so hard to spot a fake with the disc games nowadays. Really, the best you can do is look at feedback. So that's what I would recommend with that. Next is most it's locales, wherever you live, probably has some kind of retro game store. And like where I live, I'm actually very lucky. I have a lot of them. While I don't have a lot of toy stores around me, I do have a lot of retro game stores. A lot. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. How many? Let's see. Just off the top of my head, I can think of 7 within a 20-mile radius of me. Um, so support your local game stores and get to know the owners and the people that work there. You'd be amazed at how much it helps when you have a good rapport with these people. They're always, usually they're very good people. Is trying to make an honest living. If they'll help you out, just get to know them, befriend them. If you become somebody that shops there often and spends your hard-earned money there, they'll take care of you. They'll cut you deals. I mean, that definitely goes a long way. A good friend of mine, I met him because he owns a game store, and he's the first place I go to, even to sell expensive stuff. I go to him because I don't want to deal with issues on eBay if I want to sell really high priced items. He gives me slightly less than what I would get on eBay, but I don't have to deal with that headache. So because there's scammers that are buyers on eBay, and they'll this is a nightmare story. Ultimately, it worked out okay after I raised hell about it. But I basically sold an expensive game on eBay, a cart. It was a $200 Super Nintendo game. I sold it. The buyer, he messages me, says, "Hey, it's not working. What are you going to do?" All right, fine, send it back. I probably figured, maybe I didn't clean it well enough and the guy's stupid and, can't get it to work. I'll clean it, I'll test it, and I'll resell it. Well, what happened was he sent me back a fake. So he basically got his money back and kept the real thing and sent me back a $10 counterfeit. So I'm like, you know what? if I can avoid eBay, I'll do it. And ultimately, I got my money back, but I had to file a police report. I mean, it was a whole thing, and it was just such a pain in the butt. Um, if you can avoid it, avoid it. And if you can find somebody that gives, buys you expensive games and will give you, just about top dollar for it, locally, do it. A good places to find cheap games, and this applies to other hobbies as well. Again, social media, specifically Facebook Marketplace. Facebook Marketplace, a lot of times people will post stuff, and it's not collectors. It's the 55-year-old mom whose kids just went off to college, and they're sitting a box of video games, which she thinks is worthless. Well, those box of video games of that 18-year-old kid that just went off to college when he or she was playing them 10 years ago are just about considered retro at this point. And some of them might be worth a decent amount of money. Like, it could be a GameCube, and you might have Super Smash Brothers in there. You might have Mario Kart in there. Those are all $70 games. Meanwhile, this person thinks it's just taking up space and it's not worth anything. You can get killer deals that way. Now, you have to jump on those, though, because there's a lot of vultures. So be sure, set your alerts on your phone or, on Facebook Marketplace, and follow whatever video games pop up or whatever, so you can jump on them as soon as you can. So that's one way of doing it. Even though it's not as fruitful as it once was, flea markets and garage sales are still great sources. Like 10 to 15 years ago, they were a gold mine. That's how I built most of the collection, was through garage sales and flea markets. People are selling their old games for $1, $2 a piece. They don't have no idea what they have, and this is how I built everything. And I'll get to that a little later in a little more detail about what to do with with stuff. But flea markets and garage sales are huge. It's a great way to build a collection. I go, if it's garage sales, I go when it's garage sale season. I'm in the Northeast, so usually it's about end of April to mid-October. I go every Saturday. I go on Craigslist, I go on Facebook, and I go through garage sale listings. And I find, whichever one have the listings for video games. I get the addresses. I plot out a route. I always start at the most promising one, the one that looks like it is going to bear the most out. If it says it starts at 7 o'clock, be there at 6:30. If it says it starts at 8, be there at 7:30, at least, because there might be other people there. Don't go by when people say they're going to start. Go early. And as soon as people come out, just be friendly. That's the key. Always be friendly. I cannot stress that enough. Don't be pushy, but be friendly and be like, hey, are you selling any video games? Pretend like you have no idea. Hey, are you selling any video games? And they'll be like, oh, yeah, I have this box over here. Let me go grab it. They'll bring it over, and everything, and away you go. If you can, buy everything. You'll get the best deal that way. Now, after a day of garage sales or flea market, you're going to come home, you're going to have a pile of video games. What are you going to do with them? And this is how you can really, use your head and make some things happen. You might have a bunch of games in there that you already have. What are you going to do with them? Here's what I do. I spread it all out. I look at them, and at first I pick out what I want to keep. I need this, I need this, I need this. All right, this is my keep pile. Put it to the side. Then what I do is I make then 2 more piles. All right, what on here is worth selling on eBay? And what I mean by that is, if it's a bunch of $5, $6, $7 games, is it really worth selling on eBay after their fees, shipping, and everything else. What are you going to make? 50 cents on the game? No, it's not worth it. My kind of rule of thumb is if the game is worth less than $20, I'm not going to sell it on eBay. So any game that's I'm not keeping, that's more than like $20, I put in another pile because that's what I'm going to sell on eBay. Unless it's one of the super expensive games, which I talked about before, and I have a person for that. But if it's the $20 to $100 game, whatever, I put it in its own pile. Then it's like the pile of like the commons that are a few dollars. Those games, what I do, and usually at garage sales, generally speaking, I try not to spend more than $2 a game, unless it's something really good. Like if it's a bunch of commons, don't spend more than $2 a game. But if it's a bunch of commons and one good game, like something really good, then you can buy a little more. But when you buy everything, you can basically do like a bundle price. People will cut you a deal. A couple years ago, I found a PlayStation 1 lot. It was about 20 games, and it was a bunch of kind of, a bunch of, common games, $5 games, and they were selling them at, like $5 a piece. But they had Castlevania Symphony of Night in there, which is a $100 game. So I said, well, if I buy everything, how much for everything? And it worked out to like $3 a game. When you have that one expensive game in there, even though you may have overpaid a little bit on the other ones, that one expensive game makes it worthwhile. So anyways, when you have that pile of games which isn't worth very much, again, try not to do more than about $2 a game, on average, let's say. Take those games to a local video game store because they need product. And their bread and butter is on cheap games. They don't really actually survive necessarily on collectors like me. They survive on like the common, people that come in and be like, oh, I wanted to play SmackDown on the PlayStation 1. I liked that as a kid. That's like a $4 game. But the thing is, there's a ton of people that think like that, where they're like, oh, they'll come in and they'll buy the $4 or $5 game. They're not going to even be looking at the $100 games. So stores want that cheap merchandise. And usually they'll give you credit of $3 to $4 a game for most games. So now say you have 30, as an example, you have 30 games that you spent $2 a piece on. So that's $60. You can take those 30 games, trade them in for credit, so you get $90 in credit at the store. Now you're already everything is already paid for itself, essentially at this point. So now you have $90 in credit at the store. You can spend it on something that you want. Using that $90 credit, you can buy $245. You can trade it in for two $45 games for one $90 game. I've done it where it's like there was nothing I wanted, but there's a $90 game that I have, but I know I can sell that on eBay. So I'll take it and I'll sell it on eBay and I'll recoup some of my money back. So doing things like that is how you get the collection to work for you, basically. It's a hustle, but it's a good way of doing it. So that is basically it, guys. I think I hit all the points that I wanted to make. And most importantly, just have fun with it. It's not a job. Make sure you enjoy it. That's really it. And that ties into, collect what you love. Like I said, I've sold stuff which I was like, do I really need this? And bought stuff for my collection that I really did want. So, that is how you kind of tailor and personalize your collection. So that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope some of you have gotten something out of it and found it useful. Leave me a comment, like, subscribe as always. Let me know some tips that you may have, things that have come across in your collecting habits, anything that I've missed. Let me know what you think of the things that I've discussed. So I think this is a good jumping off point, and I hope this was helpful again. So till next time, guys, take care.